Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Be the Wolf. Today, I want to talk to you about a hidden reason of why your business may not be growing or scaling as expected. And when I tell you what this reason is, I want you to have an open mind because this is something that we all do. Everybody does. But I want to break it down so you can see where it's affecting your business, how it's affecting your business, and the problems that it's causing. And of course, I want to give you some information and some tips to be able to overcome this hidden business killer. So, what am I talking about? What am I talking about? I am talking about avoidance. And you might be thinking, I don't avoid anything. I am very good at getting my stuff done, one thing after the other. But if your results aren't where you want them to be, avoidance very likely is one of the main root causes. And most avoidance isn't obvious. It hides behind things like productivity, kindness, and going above and beyond. So this episode, it's going to help you see where you might be avoiding so that you can stop subconsciously holding yourself and your business back. And I want to clarify right up front, the stuff that I'm talking about today is subconscious. And so you might be aware of some of the things that you're avoiding, but I'm going to dig deeper to the stuff that's subconscious because that is the stuff that's getting in your way that you're not able to see. And once you see it, this is the good news. Once you see it, then you can actually do something about it and make the shifts in your business. And we all know about procrastination. Sure, we all do that to some degree. And so those are the things that you're aware of that you're avoiding. But let's talk about some signs that you might be avoiding something and not even know it. So if you're a person who's always busy, that's a sign, because if you're always busy, it's likely that you're using your busyness to avoid doing the hard thing, the thing that would actually drive your business forward. The human part of running a business is that we have our stuff, our own resistance, and we're not aware of it. Whereas somebody from the outside looking in can be, oh, you just need to do these three things. And you say to, oh, I'm so busy, I couldn't possibly make the time. But there's a reason why you're so busy. There's something you're avoiding. And we'll talk more about that later. So another sign of avoidance is if you micromanage your employees. You're always on top of them, trying to make sure that they do it right. You're saying yes to coffee chats that you don't even want to have. You're filling your schedule, but you might not be promoting your offers. You could be hiring people, but not taking the time to train them thoroughly. Or you might not be giving them consistent and clear direction. A lot of people hire. I know I've done this in the past. I hire because I just don't want to do the thing and I want them to take it off my plate. So I don't take the time to really train them. And it's hard because when you're trying to train somebody, you can just do it faster. So you get frustrated and you just don't want to do it. And then you think, oh, why did I even hire them in the first place? These are all signs that there is some subconscious avoidance going on. And they're things that you want to pay attention to. So if anything I've said has struck a nerve, you're going to want to keep listening. Here's another one: changing your mind a lot or changing your offers regularly. That is a classic avoidance strategy. Researching, diving, keep researching, feeling like you need to be more prepared instead of actually launching it and putting it out there. You know that old saying that done is better than perfect? If you're feeling like you need to keep figuring out more and more stuff instead of actually doing it or putting it out there, that's a sign that you're avoiding. Delaying feedback to a team member or a freelancer that you've hired and they keep dropping the ball or not doing it the way that you want it. If you have trouble giving them the negative feedback, there's some avoidance going on. So these things affect your business by blocking trust, efficiency, and productivity with your team. And if you are at a place where you do have a team, you brought on that team so that you could grow, so you could scale, so that you could keep up. But if you're creating a block with your avoidance and they're not able to trust you fully, or they're not able to be as efficient as they could be, or they're not being as productive, these are after effects of you as the team leader, as the owner, as the founder, of you avoiding something that you're probably not aware of. Avoidance also will alienate and confuse your audience, your customers. And again, it breaks that trust. So when you are avoiding things like some of the things that I talked about earlier, that will create distrust, confusion, and it will turn off your clients and your audience and your customers. And it causes ineffective communication, ineffective sales, and it breaks down relationships. Again, that trust waters down your leadership, and it keeps you and your company invisible, and it keeps you overextended. So let me drop this on you. So if you're feeling uncomfortable, that is a sign that you're pushing up against something that is causing you to avoid. It's not a red flag, it's useful information. So that feeling of uncomfortable, people always say, especially in entrepreneurship, you've got to get out of your comfort zone. So if you're feeling that, it's not always this thing to run away from and avoid, literally, but it's a sign that there's something you're avoiding. And so it behooves you. It is so smart to take the time and dig deep to figure out what it is you're avoiding. And I guarantee you it goes deeper than the first thing you think about. And I'll show you how to get deeper in a little bit. Okay, so let's talk about where avoidance really comes from. Now, you've probably seen on the internet, if you are a person who follows any personal development or motivation or confidence things, you've probably seen things like, oh, perfectionism is a trauma response or something to that nature. Trauma has been a very big buzzword for a number of years, but let me break this down. Trauma is not what we think. So most people think it's like, oh, this terrible thing happened to me. I was abused and it was horrible. Yes, obviously that is big trauma, but the average person has tons and tons of microtraumas that are affecting their daily lives every single day. And so let me tell you exactly what trauma is before we go on, before you start saying, but I don't have trauma. I had a great childhood. If that's you, congratulations. Not all of us were so lucky. But here's the thing. Trauma is literally anytime you are emotionally overwhelmed and you didn't fully process those emotions. If you think about a 2-year-old, how often they are totally overwhelmed and not always did they come to that place where they're just over it and happy again. They just kind of get stuck in that funk for a long period of time. And what that is a sign that they haven't fully processed the emotions. And so when this happens, it registers to your nervous system as trauma. Essentially, trauma is unprocessed emotions that are still stuck in your body. And so what happens is your brain thinks whatever that situation was, maybe you got yelled at, something simple like that, your brain thinks, I don't have the capacity to handle this, because if you did have the capacity to handle it, you would have processed the emotions. This is how it works. So your subconscious mind now thinks that any situation that might cause somebody to yell at you is terrifyingly dangerous, because you cannot process the emotions when that happens. And so it is danger, danger, danger. And so you will subconsciously do anything and everything to avoid being yelled at for the rest of your life until you process the emotions from that original event. And I'll tell you how to do that in a little bit. So, an example, and this has happened to so many kids, you get lost or separated from your parents in the grocery store, the mall, and you're 3 years old. This is an overwhelming event. Nobody did anything terrible to you. It's a totally normal thing that happens all the time. You lose sight of your parents and you panic, and then your system overloads and you're freaking out. You're 3 years old. Of course, you're freaking out. So now your system, your subconscious mind is tracking for any possibility where somebody might walk away from you, from clients or friends or lovers. And so you're subconsciously trying to do whatever you can to make sure that nobody walks away from you. That's a simple thing. And it's based off of those unprocessed emotions. And so subconsciously, you're going to avoid any situation, anything that might make somebody unhappy. So a lot of people pleasing comes from this, a lot of bending over for terrible and needy clients, inability to fire clients that are horrible. All of this might come literally from the time you were lost in the grocery store. And then anytime you have circumstances that reinforce that belief that people will walk away from you, then that whole thing gets stronger and your subconscious mind pivots you and makes you avoid even more. Another one would be maybe you're 2 years old and your sister rips a toy from you, rips it away. And then that overwhelm hits and you feel anger and sadness and helplessness and you're overwhelmed. And if you didn't fully process those emotions, like maybe you got distracted or your parents like swooped in and did something, but you didn't fully process all those emotions, your brain wires in that loss is dangerous and you'll do everything to avoid any kind of loss. Now in business, you avoid risks. You hesitate when you do a pitch, you undercharge because your brain is scared and trying to avoid any kind of loss, any possibility for the loss. And here's the thing, your brain is going to pivot your behavior long before you're even aware of it. Your subconscious mind processes data about 200,000 times faster than your conscious mind. So it's going to be pivoting you and making you avoid long before you're even aware of it. And avoidance is just your subconscious mind trying to protect you from those events that it thinks you can't handle because you didn't process those emotions when you were overwhelmed at 5 years old. It's not weakness. It's brain wiring, and you can teach it a new way. You can rewire your brain, and then your brain will know that you can handle it and you won't be avoiding those things anymore. So, here are some patterns of avoidance in business. Difficult conversations. That's a big one. A lot of people will avoid difficult conversations, avoiding feedback, confrontation, the truth, all to avoid a feeling of discomfort. And there's something deeper about that discomfort. People pleasing or overpraising. This is often trying to stay safe, trying to make sure that nobody's upset, usually so you don't lose something or so that you feel safe. Visibility fears. I can't tell you how many of my clients, most of them have a fear of being seen. They feel like they have to be perfect and put on this really great persona, but deep down, they're really scared if people see who they truly are, that they're going to lose something and they're not going to be safe. So this happens when people aren't promoting their work. They're not posting, or you're not talking about your offers, or you're staying vague. Let me tell you about a situation I ran into the other day. So I've been low key looking for someone to build a coffee table for me. I have something in mind. So I've been looking for a woodworker. And I ran into somebody the other day who I know works in a wood shop. So I asked them, "Hey, do you build furniture?" And they said, "Well, yes, sometimes." And we got to talking about what I wanted. And this person was so vague. They were talking to me about how some people wouldn't want to do what I wanted, and that how much money it would cost, what somebody would charge me if they did it this way, and somebody else might charge me this. And he talked about how he was making all this art and stuff, but that he didn't want to put it in a gallery because he just couldn't see that. But I couldn't get a handle on whether he was interested in taking on this project or whether he was trying to offload it. It was very confusing. He was so vague. He was not talking up himself or being clear. And so he said, "Let me give you a card," but didn't have a card. I took his number. And then he said, as he was walking away, "Oh, yeah, well, just text me or something if you want to talk about that thing." So now here I am left. I have no idea if this person wants to do my project. They talked about how some people wouldn't want to do it. Is that him? Does he not want to do it? Is he gonna it was just so confusing. And because of that, I don't feel confident about working with him. And so you can see how, if you're hesitant about being clear, talking about your offer, what you offer, and following through and saying, "Yes, come meet me at this time," and just locking it down, that is going to prevent you business. So he was avoiding talking about the offer of setting up a time. He was avoiding so many different things, and the deeper stuff was probably about being seen, or maybe people pleasing, like feeling like he needed to be nice to me. I don't know. All I know is it was off-putting and I don't want to do business with him. So, procrastination, of course, we know is a form of avoidance, and that comes a lot of times from underlying perfectionism, feeling like you need to over prepare. You're not starting, you're delaying the real progress to avoid possibility of failure or judgment. Integrity gaps. This is a big one, saying you'll do something and then pushing it down the list. And that undermines your trust in yourself and others' trust in you. Because when you don't trust yourself to keep your word to yourself, you come off untrustworthy. And that's an energy thing, a frequency thing. And we can deny it all we want, but you walk into a used car lot and you feel the slimy salesperson versus the other salesperson. You can feel the difference. So you can't say that it's not a real thing. Okay. Another pattern is doing it for the wrong reasons. You're just doing it for the money, the safety, the validation. And that is often about avoiding what you really want to do deep down because you're just too scared. You're afraid of not having enough. And those emotions are driving your decision to take on clients just for the money, take on clients that aren't a good fit because it will look good on your testimonial page or something like that. Okay, so I want to talk to you about fear of success and fear of failure because these things, if you have them, They are classic things that have to do with avoidance. You see, it isn't really fear of success or fear of failure. They're conflicts between what your conscious mind wants and what your subconscious is trying to avoid. So, the fear of success, right? So, let me give you an example. The fear of success. If I grow, I'll have to say no to social events and people might get mad. So, that's an example. It's not about being successful, that you're afraid of being successful. It's about the consequences of the success. If you have the success, then you have to take on a team or your company has to grow and you have to have more employees. And then you'll be responsible for other people's income. And that responsibility might be something you're trying to avoid. The having to say no to social events. Maybe you have trouble saying no. Maybe you worry about people getting mad at you. Maybe you got yelled at a lot when you were young and you really don't want people to be mad at you. The fear of failure, for example, if I fail, I'll lose social status and people might walk away. All that could be stemmed from that grocery store incident. Or if I fail, I might need help. I might have to ask for help. And other people might say no. They might think less of me and they might not help me. So I can't fail because if I had to ask for help, that would feel catastrophically overwhelming because maybe one time you needed help when you were little and it wasn't given to you or you got yelled at for it. You know, we get yelled at a lot when we're kids. Don't do that. I mean, it feels like you're getting yelled at. Some parents are not really yelling at you, but when they're like very stressed out and they're like, don't do that, you shouldn't do that, it feels overwhelming when you're little and you're afraid they might walk away. So these fears are their survival strategies and they're based on the past emotional pain. They're based on the past. They're not based on truth, but subconsciously, we're still trying to avoid those same incidents over and over and over again. And they were great strategies, the avoidance when we were young, because we didn't want to get in trouble, but not so great strategies when we're a little bit older. So, how do we stop avoiding? First, step one, you have to notice what you're avoiding. You have to dig deep and pay attention. If you have said that you're going to do something to yourself 3 times and you haven't done it, you're avoiding something. It's a sign to look. If that one thing that keeps getting pushed till tomorrow on your to-do list, but you don't get it done and you just keep pushing it off because you keep thinking it's not that important, that is a great thing to dive into because I bet you there's some subconscious avoiding in there. So you have to ask yourself, this is important here. These are the questions. Ask yourself, what could I lose if I do this? And dig deep on this. Like, look at the consequences. What is the consequence? What am I going to lose if I do this? And if that happens, what will I lose then? And what will I lose then? Remember, I said that the subconscious mind processes data 200,000 times faster than the conscious mind. So it's already run through about 15 to 20 scenarios based on your past before you're even aware. So you want to keep digging deeper. What could I lose? What am I going to lose if I do this? If I put myself out there and goes on a speaking tour and speak in 9 cities, what am I going to lose? Am I going to lose doing the day-to-day stuff at the business? I would have to lose the day-to-day control of my business because I would have to leave my team there to run it for me. Okay, well, if I lose the day-to-day control of my business, what do I lose then? Well, then I lose money because I don't trust them. I don't feel like they're competent. And then what do you lose then? And just keep taking it deeper and deeper And you'll get to this point where you see it for its ridiculousness. So you get, I will lose money. And then what happens if I lose money? And then I end up on the street. And then I'm homeless with no food and no friends. And then I die. And you get to see how ridiculous it is. So you can chase these fears down and start to actually address them and deal with them. And you'll see that the subconscious mind often has very illogical fears. Of course, if you go on a speaking tour and you leave your team to handle it, you're not going to die. You're not going to end up on the street. It is silly. And once you can start to see how irrational that is, sometimes that's all it takes to let it go. The other question you need to ask yourself is, what would I have to do if I stop avoiding this? So if you go on that speaking tour and then you bring in a whole bunch of new clients and a whole bunch of new offers, so all these things start to happen, what's the consequence of that? And then what would you have to do? Well, then you would have to maybe hire some more people. And then you would have to be responsible for those said people. And then you would have to take on bigger clients that had lots more money and lots more invested in you. And then you might be worried about losing their money. You see, it's always about, what do I have to do or what am I going to lose? And if you chase that down, you can get into those fears. So when you begin to ask yourself, what emotions come with those what ifs, those what if I lost, what if I have to do, and start to deal with those emotions. That's the real work, is processing those emotions. Charles Kettering, I think that's how you say his name, Kettering. Anyway, he says, a problem well defined is a problem half solved. So once you get to the core of those emotions that come with, what do I lose? And what do I have to do? Once you can identify those emotions and start to deal with them, you've got the problem half solved. Now you know what you're dealing with and you can actually do something about it. So how do we prevent it? How do we prevent the avoidance? Yes, of course, you can power through the emotion. And every time you do it, your subconscious learns, hey, I didn't die. Maybe this isn't so dangerous. And every time you do it, you'll have to go through the fear. But when you know what the fear or the emotion is, it's a little bit easier to deal with it. So that's a great step. Powering through is great. It works. It's what most people do. But if you want a less painful way than having to power through and push through it, here, you can try this. So you want to close your eyes and ask yourself, when is the very first time that I felt this emotion? Just close your eyes and let your subconscious take you back. And it's almost always going to be sometime under the age of 7. So 7 and younger, probably even under the age of 5. And you'll find that self, that past self who was overwhelmed, maybe a 2-year-old who dropped their ice cream, and you will sit with your past self. Just sit with them and give them what they need that they didn't get so that they could fully process those emotions. Maybe they needed some safety. Maybe they needed some time. They just needed to know somebody was there, that love, the support, the space to just feel their emotions. When a toddler loses it and they're totally overwhelmed and they're crying, and then 5 minutes later, they're totally fine. That's what happens when the emotion is fully processed. So you're going to sit with your young self, your little 3-year-old self, and just comfort them and let them feel and have their emotions. And yes, you may have some tears or you may feel some anger too in this process, and just let it come out. And then there'll be a point when in your mind, that little kid is done with you and wants to run off and play. And that's when you know the emotion is fully processed. If you get to the root of it and you feel all of it, you'll be free of the avoidance trigger. That's the key, though. You've got to get to that very first event and you've got to feel all of it. And that's all it takes to get rid of the trigger. Now, if you can't access it or it keeps coming back, you might need deeper tools. Sometimes we have layers of repressed emotions that we can't necessarily access yet. And that's where working with someone like me comes in, or somebody else who has the tools to use advanced mental techniques to neutralize those old emotions, clear the pattern at the root. And that's somebody that can get into those repressed emotions with you in a way that's safe and does not re-traumatize you. Because this is a really important, is you want to make sure if you're working with somebody in that they can lead you through something like this without re-traumatizing you, because re-traumatizing you just makes the problem worse. So take some time now after listening to this and think about where avoidance could be costing you income, impact, integrity. Your subconscious mind is powerful and it is built to protect you, but your conscious mind is even more powerful. And the more you understand why you're avoiding, the more you can tap into what the emotions are that are driving the avoidance decisions, the more you have the power to shift it. You cannot change something unless you're aware of it. And so if you want to develop the tools to have even more awareness, I have a guide out there. It's the 3 secrets the business gurus never talk about, will help you grow your business and love doing it, because we want to grow, but we also want to have a good time, right? Oh, well, at least I do. Maybe you don't. I don't know. Maybe you like having no fun in your business. But if you want to have some fun in your business, you want to grow it, love it, these 3 secrets will help you. It will also give you some tools to help you identify those things that you're avoiding and deal with those emotions. So you can grab that at bethewolfgift.com. Open up your browsers. Let's not avoid it now. bethewolfgift.com, and you can grab that free guide, and you'll have even more tools to combat that invisible business killer of avoidance. So thank you for listening today. And remember, everybody, when you unleash the power of you, humanity evolves. We'll see you next time on Be the Wolf. Bye, everyone.